All right, let's do this. It is Friday, the 14th of October, which means that the Rings of Power is now out in its entirety. At least the first season is now out in its entirety. And we're going to talk about it. Hello, Lady Sweden. Nice to see you. Um, I want to talk to you about it, get your take on it, give my take on it. I think we talked about this. Was it last? Well, I think I was out last week. Yeah, so 2 weeks ago, we kind of did a check in about how we felt halfway through the season. I gave a rant, which I won't do it again in full today, but we'll probably talk about that stuff too. Um, and kind of just our impressions of how it wrapped up. So I'm really curious to see what you guys have to say about it. Um, and what I'll do, so I'm traveling right now. I don't think this is going to be a full hour long stream, but what I'm going to do is actually you're not late. I'm early. I'm a half hour early. What I'm going to do is just use this little box right here to kind of keep us on track with what we're talking about. Basically, go kind of character by character or group by group in a way, and that'll kind of help us out keeping it on track. Poop emoji. Do I look terrible today? Is this an insult of some kind? The channel stinks. You don't like the channel. Okay. um, all right. So there. Oh, yeah, nice. I'm in Seattle, and there's a squirrel right outside my window because there's a squirrel everywhere in Seattle. Anyway, all right. So the Rings of Power. Where do we want to start? Where do we want to go? All right. So let me pull up. Where's my? I think I want this one. Yeah. You know what? Let's start with something a little less consequential as far as the finale goes. Okay, so let's start with Arondir and that storyline. I can't remember the name of the woman that he's in love with, and honestly, okay. So and we are going full spoilers. I put this in the title. I put this everywhere. So hopefully it doesn't take anybody by surprise. Yes, we are going to do spoilers. In fact, I think well, yeah. Let me before we. Okay, there we go. Just so that if anybody joins in, they know we're going to get into spoilers. Okay, so you want me to do overall impression first, um, and then yeah, we'll come back to Arondir in just a second and get into some specifics. My overall impression is that it ended a lot stronger than it started. I liked the first episode. I liked the second episode. I felt like it got bogged down for a while. It kind of it didn't have much of a purpose, an objective. But the end of the season, the finale, I thought at least gave us some of that. If I were to give a rating out of 10, I think I started the season saying like, oh, this is a 7.5, something around there. And then halfway through the season, um, well, with the tree, with the Silmaril tree, and all that, the Mithril stuff, like when that came up in what would that have been, episode 6, maybe 5 or 6, whatever it was, that was a blow, and that dropped it down to like a 5 tops. Now at the end of the season, I'm trying very hard to not let my lore issues get in my way of enjoying something, and I am enjoying it. So I think I'm about back up to a 7. It's not amazing story wise, but it's amazing in some other ways. Um, Storytelling could be better. Anyway, so yeah, overall impression, I it it like it went through peaks and valleys, but it ended at about the same spot it started. Is that disappointing as an answer? Sorry. Um, you have to sit down with it. This will be largely spoilery. Well, that's up to you. There's not a. There's only one thing to spoil. The only, well, I mean, it's kind of a related thing, but the question is, who is Sauron? Um, and that's revealed in the final episode, with a little trickery involved. But it is revealed in the final episode. That's about the only spoiler. It's the only mystery that was really going through this. So it's like cheese or wine; it gets better with time. I don't know. I don't know. I'll have to rewatch this whole season again. I'll probably rewatch it with Sarah and see how it goes. Started to fall from the mithril point and forward. Yeah, I feel like it recovered from that. The shock of the mithril storyline was pretty bad. It really it hit me hard. But as that shock wore off, I still think it's stupid. Don't get me wrong. I still think it's stupid. But I think it's stupid from you know, from a lifelong Tolkien fan's perspective. Well, lifelong. Let's see. Okay, well, we're gonna get into some stuff. Okay. All right, let's get to what was I going to do? Okay, yeah, that's right. We're going to go kind of, character by character or group by group. So let's start with Arondir, the girl, whatever her name is. I can't remember. I can't remember the kid's name. I can't remember anybody's name. I had to look him up. Him, yeah. I know which way to point. I had to look him up so I can remember what his name was. He doesn't even appear in the final episode. And that whole storyline, the Mordor storyline, is, I don't know about over, but it's definitely like it got pushed aside for the finale, which I was fine with. It wasn't ever my favorite bit. I was okay with it, but it wasn't ever my favorite bit, storyline wise. So, oh, Bronwyn, yes, thank you. Bronwyn was her name. Okay, all right. So let's see. Okay. Like I said, I'm happy they left him behind. A little boring, but I did like like I said before, I hated how, or maybe I didn't say this before. I think I said this on the Lorehounds podcast. I was a guest on there. You can, if you search for Lorehounds, if you're not already subscribed, I was on their episode this Monday. I think it was this Monday. So you can listen to me talk there. I was a little more animated and forthcoming than I am sometimes on our own episodes. I really let loose on there. I hated how they got Mount Doom to erupt, but I really liked the eruption of Mount Doom. That was probably the coolest part of that storyline. Anyway, so yeah, you know what? Let's leave. Oh, I hope my Wi-Fi is okay. Like I said, I'm traveling. I'm in an Airbnb, and the Wi-Fi is not awesome. So if I suddenly drop off, then sorry about that. Okay, let's bring up another one. Let's try. Oh, okay, all right. Here's a good. Here's a good way to get everybody fighting. Let's fight over the Harfoots. The Harfoots, the Hobbits, the whatever we want to call them. How do we feel about the Hobbits, the Harfoots? I didn't care for them for most of the season. They had their moments. There were some fun bits. I don't mean to say that it was like bad, but I felt like it was distracting me from the larger plot of what was going on with the rings and Sauron's rise and Numenor and all that stuff. And then you've got the Harfoots, and it's like, oh gosh, we really have to go back to the Harfoots. And on the on our Discord server, I saw some people saying, hey, when in the finale with the farewell scene. So what's her name? Nori is going to go off with the stranger who, at this point, we know he isn't Sauron, right? We assume he's Gandalf, but is he Gandalf? Is he somebody else? We don't know. Um, anyway, so she's going off with him, and there was the goodbye scene. And I saw some people on Discord saying that they just kind of, it's time to scroll on my phone or fast forward through that part. I don't care. I have to say that goodbye scene was really, really well done. I thought it was really touching. There's the scene a few minutes earlier when do they call him the Pathfinder, the older guy who kind of went with him to go rescue the wizard, and uh, then he dies in spoilers, spoiler mode. He dies, and I thought that was pretty well handled. I enjoyed that bit. And then the goodbye scene I thought was really affecting. And so I think it's one of those things where I didn't realize over the course of the season how much I was kind of emotionally letting myself get involved with the Harfoots. And so by the time I got there, I was really affected. And I have to say, this does change. I don't think that I would have been affected by it as much a decade ago, or 2 decades ago. But becoming a parent, like it really does change things. My standard line about parenthood is everything you've heard about it is true. Everything, all the good stuff, all the bad stuff, like it's all true. And one of the things that about becoming a parent that is true is that things like that, like a scene where mom and dad send their girl off for an adventure, whatever. Um, like it hits you different. So I really liked that. Let's see. Luke says my take on the Harfeet. What's it? Proud feet. Yes. Their only function is background on the Istar character to show his relationship closeness with hobbits. Um, they it's not their only function. I think it also, just as a narrative device, they bring a levity to the show that you're not going to get with the freaking Numenorians. Certainly not with the elves. A little bit with the dwarves, but definitely not the Southerners who are like downtrodden, hard scrabble, down on their luck people. Like, so there's a lot of like darkness and kind of heaviness in every other storyline. So the function from a narrative perspective is to just give the viewer a break from all of the heaviness all the time. But you're right. That is, you're talking about them, you know, showing Gandalf's relationship with the hobbits. Like that's all true. Um, so yeah, you're right on there. But I don't know about the only thing. They do serve some other purposes, and they give us what I think is a really great performance from the gal who plays Nori. Um, the guy who plays, we're just going to call him Gandalf. Okay, maybe he's not Gandalf. We'll see. But the guy who plays Gandalf, I think, did a pretty good job. It's shocking to me in previous episodes, not so much in the finale, but in previous episodes, they would do these close-ups at kind of odd angles on his face, and I swear it's Luke Wilson, like in makeup. He looks so much like Luke Wilson in some shots. It's shocking. Um, all right, where are we? The parting scene in episode 8 just dragged on. I get it. I get it. It did go for a little while. Um, but I guess I don't know. I guess I'm just okay with it. Like I said, it hit me pretty well, so I was okay with it. All right. Let's see. Oh, this is a good question. Let's come back to this. How the three Elven rings are not controlled by Sauron and what their role is. We're gonna let's talk about the forging of the rings, but let's wait for that. Okay, let's go through a few more characters um, before we get into it. Oh, sorry, going back to the other storyline, how do you feel about elf-human pairings outside of the canon? Um, I'm ambivalent. It's on the one hand, the mythology says, like, these are the 3 times that this has happened, but as some people have pointed out, um, history and mythology and whatnot, they don't always take everything into account. Um, so it could be this is the one time when it was like royalty involved, basically, and who knows what was going on in the underclasses. So that's a reasonable explanation for that. So I kind of feel like there's a part of me that wishes that the three elf human pairings had been left untouched and alone. And then there's another part of me that's like, hey, as long as they tell a good story, I guess I'm all right with it. It doesn't feel quite as, or I should say, it doesn't feel nearly as egregious as the love story in The Hobbit. Wow. Okay. All right. Let me. Okay. So let's hide that. Let's find us another subject to talk about. Come back to that. Come back to that. No, let's I don't know. Is there anything to say about this? We're gonna find out. Kind of depends on you guys. Is there anything to say about the dwarves? Um, we get excellent humor at Khazad-dûm. Elrond and Durin is a highlight. I agree with that. I really like both of these actors. I think they did a fine job. So Disa and Durin did a. I think they both did a great job with the roles that they were given. Um, yeah, really enjoyed their scenes. But I'm not sure what to say about it. I feel like the dwarf storyline in season one has been all set up, and essentially no payoff. Um, in a way, we could say that the Forging of the Rings was a payoff, but in a way, not really. It's kind of tough to say. Um, but I enjoyed their performances. All right, so I love it. It's hard not to be worried by stupid and unnecessary inconsistencies with the lore when the main selling point of the show is that it was based on Tolkien's work. Well, you could say that about any change to any property ever, right? So the you know, gosh, what's a really well regarded one of my favorite adaptations is Stardust, right? Neil Gaiman writes Stardust, and then they make the movie Stardust. And it is very inconsistent in many places with the book and how it worked. But the main selling point was, hey, this is Stardust by Neil Gaiman. It's a delightful fairy tale. So it's like the main selling point of any adaptation is, hey, here's this thing you love, and now here's this different version of it, or a different medium, whatever. And so while I take your point, um, the logical conclusion that we have to come to with that is there can be no changes at any time for any reason, and I'm not I'm not there. I'm not there. All right. Okay. Let's see. I have more problem with it's only happened 3 times ever than it happened more than that and not made it into huge poems. I guess I don't quite get it. Um, mm, all right. Marketed as a love letter to Tolkien. I don't remember that marketing. Um, all right. So let's yeah, exactly. Yeah, most people, even in Middle Earth, didn't make it into mythology and songs. Exactly. It's I will say that's one thing about this show that is a little bit frustrating is that it can't seem to decide whether it's going to be about the big movers and shakers or the regular people. Um, and Lord of the Rings, you had the regular person embodied by the hobbits, right? And they go on this grand adventure and meet the big kings and wizards and movers and shakers of Middle Earth. Um, but they also become they become primary in that way, in the same way that Gandalf is, or Aragorn is, or whatever. In this one, it felt a lot like with the Southlanders storyline, that they wanted to inject some of that, and to some extent with the Harfoots as well, but especially with the Southlanders, they wanted to inject, hey, this is about the tough existence, the down in the muck life that these people have to live. But then it would go to like Gil-galad's throne room or something, and it's like, so it was constantly like, so who is this story about? So that's one thing um, uh, that I guess I wish were a little different. Is the only way I can think to put it. But all right. If I could make one change to have the biggest impact for the better, what would that be? Um, by the way, if you take the space out of that, that is our handle now. Later this year, YouTube is introducing handles, and so we reserved the legendarium. If I could make one change to have the biggest impact for the better, um, one change. The problem is the change I would make would have ripple effects, and so you'd have to pretty much rewrite the whole season. Um, but the change that I would make would be, um, that the forging of the rings would happen about 3 to 4 episodes earlier, and it would last the rest of the season. It would culminate in the same place that it did, but would start much, much earlier. All right, so there you go. All right. I've been thinking about your point about how it's just too big. I think you're right. They're trying to introduce us to too many major characters with different cultures, backgrounds, and motivations. I wonder how different it would have gone if they'd narrowed in on a few characters. Yeah, it's people are obviously comparing this a lot to House of the Dragon, um, and that's one thing that House of the Dragon does. They have a lot of characters, but they kind of focus on the same like half dozen, and they're often together, right? And so it feels, while the world feels big, the the story feels more intimate. And yeah, like you say, it could have gone pretty differently, um, if they'd narrowed in, and kept things like, when you're talking about going to Numenor and then Lindon and then Mordor and, wherever the Harfoots are, they're going to Rune, which should be pretty cool. That's kind of interesting. It's you're just blowing everything way, way out. So, all right, let's leave the dwarves behind. Who do we want to talk about? All right, should we talk about him? No, okay, you know what? Now let's do this one first. Okay, like I said, I want to get to the forging of the rings, but we're going to save that for a minute. Let's talk about these weirdos. So, who the heck are they? Like, if you didn't see this latest episode that just came out, oh man, my hair is like all over the place. If you didn't see the episode that just came out, the episode essentially starts with these ladies catching up to the stranger, and they kind of ended the last episode with them torching the Harfoot's camp, and then uh, they kneel before the stranger and call him Lord Sauron, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it is Sauron. Oh, this is crazy." And they're gonna like teach him to harness his magic and all this stuff. but, like, who are they? What are they from some are they are they elves? Are they humans? Are they something else? So at the end of the episode, they're defeated, but when they're defeated, they kind of are transformed into moths or butterflies or something. Again, it's that moth motif that we got from the Fellowship of the Ring, right? When Gandalf is whispering to the moth in his hand, and then it comes in again at the beginning of this season with the moths or the fireflies. Sorry, the fireflies. I think there's a moth in there somewhere, but there's the fireflies, and now we have these beings transforming into moths and flying away. Like, what the heck is this? Who are they? So I don't know what to make of this. Um, I think it's an interesting setup. There could be something cool coming out of this in season 2. We'll see. Um, but I'm mostly baffled by it. It mostly like in the future it might make a lot more sense, but right now what it feels like is, hey, we need some antagonists. We need, something going on to make, some peril, to borrow a word, right? We need some peril for our characters, and so they don't feel like anything more than just like weird looking obstacles. So, um, moths was that so? Did you watch it? Did you? That's what it looked like to me. I guess I could be wrong. I'll have to go back and watch it again. But when I watched it this morning, yeah, they're defeated and they turn into like this burst of white moths and fly away. Um, so maybe a lesser Maiar of sorts. Yeah, again, who knows? There are many powers in Middle Earth. um, Anyway, so yeah, that was weird, but they did provide a good death scene for the elderly Harfoot guy. So I like that. I like that. All right, I want to hear more about what you guys have to say. Uh, and while you think about that, I'm going to um, pull up our guy here. There he is. Look at that. If only I could be so handsome. All right, let's talk about Halbrand. Halbrand slash Sauron. All right. Lore-wise, I have issues, and story-wise, I have some issues. Story-wise, I know that they were very careful um, about like he never lies, right? This was a big thing from his character, like or from the actor gave an interview. He's like, Halbrand never lies through the first season. Okay, great. Um, so and that's essentially why a lot of people were able to figure out halfway through the season that yeah, this is probably Sauron. But there were moments that where Halbrand never lied to Halbrand never lied to the other characters, but he lied to the audience. And that ticks me off. That feels like sloppy writing. So, for instance, I think there were 2 or 3 of these types of things, but the one that sticks out the most in my mind is the moment on the ship. Was it on the ship? I think they're on it. Wait, or were they're in Numenor? No, it was when he was coming out of the prison cell. Yeah, I gotta watch this again. Because it might have been at the forge or something. But point being, he's carrying around this crest, right? It's like a necklace that he's got around his neck, or it's on his belt or something. But it's that crest of the royal line of the Southlands. And there's a moment when he doesn't want to go along with Galadriel's plan when they're in Numenor. He doesn't want to do any of this. He just wants to work the forge and whatnot. And so he slams the thing down on the table, kind of like Captain, I'm turning in my badge. Nah. And then he starts walking away. And he gets a few steps away and he stops and he straightens and he thinks, nah. And he turns around and he grabs it off the table. There's there's no one around. He's not so he's not like there's this internal struggle. Do I want to take up the mantle? Oh, am I worthy of this thing? It's kind of what they had Aragorn go through in the movie versions of the Lord of the Rings. Um, and if there had been someone around, that would make sense, right? He's performing. He's like, you know, he's showing his internal struggle by performing for whoever, Galadriel or whatever Numenorians are around. But there's no one around. He's only performing for the audience. Um, and so there was that kind of thing where it felt like sloppy writing because they the trickery wasn't happening within the story. It's like a fourth wall breaking kind of thing. So anyway, so I have that issue. But as far as his actual reveal, his scene with Galadriel by the stream, I thought that for what it was in terms of the show, I thought it was really good. Um, his, I thought he did a great job of doing the deceitful, flattering thing, being compelling while also being evil. I thought it was really good. Now, um, like I said, lore wise, I have issues with the reveal and the timing and all of that stuff. Um, but uh, but yeah, okay, okay. So let's get to some of that. Okay. Um, oh, okay. You did watch it. You're just wondering in the moth connection. That's fine. Yeah, me too. We'll see if that goes anywhere. Um, okay. Narratively, the ladies in white, whatever we're calling them, represent Sauron's gathering power in the background. Kind of. I felt like the orcs were doing that, but then of course we have those internal struggles, issues, whatever. Lore wise, was there a clear trigger for the sending of the Istar? Isn't it Sauron regaining power? Eh, is there an event that triggers it? Because it happens like 1,000 years into the second age, or sorry, the third age or more. And off the top of my head, I can't remember. Sorry, but it's a good question for me to look up. I know it's in the Rings of Power in the third age, that kind of that bit, so you can find it pretty easily. Let's see. Looks like Vigo Mortensen. I am sure that is not on accident. That is not at all on accident. Let's see. Do we think later seasons will show a return of Sauron to Middle Earth? Yes, and a return of Sauron to Numenor. All right. Shouldn't we have seen? Oh, there I hit it again. Shouldn't we have seen more of him as Anatar? We should have. Yes, absolutely. What they did show, I thought they did a good job of kind of showing how he might operate, where he's not going to tell Celebrimbor what to do, but kind of nudge him along the path and help him out in that way. And there's the great scene when he says this will be a power not of flesh but above flesh, and she's like, where did you hear that phrase? And he says, I don't know. And it's very much in line with that kind of Christian idea of the devil whispering to you and feeding you ideas, and he's so subtle that you think that they're your own ideas. So I thought that was really good from the Sauron perspective. I thought that was really well done. Um, shouldn't we have seen more of him? Yes, because lore wise, again, I don't know what they're going to do with the other rings, but Anatar and Celebrimbor have been making rings for a while. They've been making let's see, what did they make? The 16 rings that ended up going to men and dwarves, and then it's only later that um, they end up parting ways, um, and Celebrimbor makes the 3 elven rings without his help, which they were pretty careful to show. He was gone by that point. By the time they actually forged those rings, he was gone. Then he goes off to Mordor. He's going to make the One Ring. Okay, great. But where are the other rings? Because part of the whole reason that the One Ring has sort of immediate power over other ring bearers is because of Sauron's hand in the forging of those rings. So when and where are they going to get forged? I don't know yet, but it's one of those, like, lore wise, and it doesn't. This doesn't have to be a thing where, hey, I've read all the books a million times and I know everything about the lore. Even just in terms of the movies, the stuff that everybody is familiar with, it's not going to make necessarily much sense. I mean, maybe they'll make it make sense, but he should have. That's why I say, somebody asked earlier, what change would I make? If I could make one change, it would be that they would have been forging rings for a while, before they got to the 3 elven rings. Anyway, and that's partly why. Is Sauron morally ambiguous in the books? Great question. He is, kind of, yeah, kind of. Um, not for most of it. Don't get me wrong. He's a bad dude. He's a real bad dude. But he is the servant of Morgoth, and at the end of the first age, and Sauron, believe me, he's racked up, plenty of points for getting sent to hell forever. But at the end of the first age, Morgoth is defeated, and Sauron is given a chance to kind of repent. And um, and there are, in the Silmarillion, it says something like, there are those who hold that he did so genuinely, but then, the pull of evil was too strong and it sucked him back in, or, whatever the case may be. But there is some suggestion that he did try to be better. And so I think that there is textual basis for kind of what they're doing with Sauron. And also I guess, point being, like, we see Halbrand trying to, he looks like he's doing the right thing. He's going to take up the leadership role, um, and whatnot. And so that's where I say we have some textual basis for him, like, being a good person in, like, a scene by scene basis. Now, as far as what they're doing with him being, the way that he is, the way that he views himself, the way that he tries to seduce Galadriel into joining his side, I think that's very much, part of part of him, and part of what makes Sauron Sauron, and part of what makes any good bad guy a good bad guy, is that he doesn't think he's a bad guy. He's trying to, unite Middle Earth and heal Middle Earth and all this, according to his version of that, right? Um, so morally ambiguous, I guess part of that is going to depend on whether you think he's morally ambiguous. It's like that old question of, if you read 1984, it's really obvious what's wrong with this world. And then you read Brave New World, and you have to grapple with the question, what's so wrong with this, right? Like, it sounds like they've got it figured out. And so you have to, like, figure out, what is it about my ethics that makes this thing unethical, right? And so I thought Sauron's speech with Galadriel was a good example of that. Um, Not a great example. He could have gotten more specific with what he means by heal and unite and all that stuff, but it's a good example of it. So, all right, I feel like I'm getting bogged down. You guys have had a bunch of comments. Um, Let's see. That scene was robbed of impact. It was just a lie to the audience. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry. I'm going to try to catch up with you guys. um, I dipped out of that show after the second episode. How worthy of your time does it end up being over the course of the season? Um, I mean, it's it's skippable. This show is skippable. If you're not into the Lord of the Rings, if you don't feel like that's a passion or something, like I kind of have to watch this show. I am compelled by my history and my personality, and well, and by the fact that I run this podcast, I'm compelled to watch this show. Um, but for somebody who's kind of on the fence, whatever. I think that it ended strongly, but somebody else might disagree. So yeah, it's tough to say. Why not follow the lore and disguise Sauron as Anatar? They kind of did. That was that it the moment that it is revealed to those who know who have read the Silmarillion, who know some of the lore. We have the bit earlier where the three ladies in white kneel to the stranger and call him the Dark Lord Sauron, and as an audience, you're, oh my gosh, he is Sauron. We were wrong. It wasn't Halbrand. And then later on, um, Halbrand is talking to Celebrimbor and makes a little suggestion, and Celebrimbor says, Your suggestion is intriguing," and he says, "Call it a gift." And that's what Anatar means, giver of gifts or bringer of gifts. I think it's giver of gifts. Um, but anyway, and so that was the moment for somebody like me who's read the Silmarillion a million times. It was like, boom, that's it. He's Sauron. End of story. I mean, the fact that he's there is kind of the giveaway, but like that was their way of confirming it. Um, so why not follow the lore and disguise Sauron as Anatar? I guess my point just being, in a way, they did kind of make him Anatar, and there's no. I don't recall that Anatar is ever like supposed to be an elf. I suppose like logically it would make sense because that's who they do their most hanging out with, right? Is elves hang out with other elves, but I don't think it's ever like explicitly said that he's an elf. So, all right. Um, Judging by the showrunner's comments, we might still see more of Anatar. Okay, this is a great comment, and true because Sauron is a shapeshifter. That's kind of his thing. He loses that ability eventually with the destruction of Numenor, but it's kind of a thing that he's able to do. So there's no reason why he couldn't show up again in a different form. We might have another mystery in season 2. Who is Sauron? Where is he? What's he doing? He could show up again and forge more rings with Celebrimbor. That would be weird, but yeah, they could do that. So, where can one read more about Anatar in the OG works by Tolkien? The last chapter of the Silmarillion is called "Of the Rings of Power and the Third Age," and that's where you're going to get most of that. So you go there and read Akalabeth, the downfall of Numenor. That's the chapter preceding the one I just mentioned, and that's going to give you some info on what Sauron does in Numenor to bring about its downfall. So yeah, read the Silmarillion. Oh, somebody already beat me to it. Okay. All right. The name Anatar actually isn't mentioned in the appendices, I believe. Yeah, that would make sense. I was kind of racking my brains to remember if they mentioned it in there, and it would make sense if it's not. So they couldn't use it. It's what a mess. The rights issues are a mess. I continue to, um, you know, absent more information on how all this stuff works, or is working in this case. I am laying a lot of blame for, weird rights issues and narrative inconsistencies on the Tolkien estate. Um, and knowing what we know of them, I think they want this adaptation to fail. They want it to be terrible, so that people will stop asking for the rights to the Lord of the Rings. Um, there's that conspiracy mindset of mine. Um, but if that's the case, if they're deliberately holding some things back to make it worse, then screw that. All right. Rings of Power makes Peter Jackson's Hobbit look like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. It's a funny line. I heartily disagree. Um, uh, if you dare, go back and watch The Hobbit again. I promise it's worse. It's worse than you remember. All right. For some reason, I thought that Sauron had changed into Galadriel when she said we should make 3 rings. Okay, let's talk. Actually, let's. This is a great point. I'm going to go with TJ. I'm calling you TJ. All right, let me pull up my last thing here. Where is my picture? Just so we have something to. Oops. Something to talk around. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about the elves. Okay. And let's talk specifically about Galadriel. Um, it was a common complaint after the first couple of episodes, and even as the season progressed, that Galadriel was too focused and stubborn and wooden. She, she only ever has one facial expression. Doesn't she? No, which of course isn't true if you watch the episodes, but she's definitely very like stoic and often angry, and or if not angry, then at least, well, whatever. We'll leave the adjectives for now. Um, but I thought, let's see. So TJ says, for some reason, I thought that Sauron had changed into Galadriel when she said we should make 3 rings. So, no, but that scene, when so the forging of the rings happens, and she says, "Yeah, we need to make 3," and then they make the rings, and it's all interesting, and they have them on the table there, and Elrond has gone outside and found the scroll with the lineage, and so he knows that Halbrand isn't who he says he is, and all this. Um, he goes back inside, and he and Galadriel share a look, and it's straight up like the best acting of the entire season so far, because it's like there's no dialogue involved, but it's the weight of all of the scenes that have come before, where Sauron, he pulls Galadriel into that kind of mind meld thing, and in the form of her brother tells her, touch the darkness once more. It's only in, what does he say, only in touching the darkness can we know the light, or something like that. And so Sauron, he fails to seduce Galadriel into being his queen, but he succeeds in seducing her into making the rings, essentially. And all of that, like, so her kind of like, knowing that this is a triumph, we've made these objects that are going to assist us in our quest to save Middle Earth or whatever. So she's got this triumph, but she's also got this guilt. Um, and then Elrond comes in, and he and she exchange glances, and so he knows, or suspects what's going on, and she's super guilty about it. And it all happens in like 5 or 10 seconds. And it was really great. She did an awesome job with that scene, I thought. So no, it probably was not Sauron changed into Galadriel, but you did remind me of that scene. Um, why would Galadriel hide Halbrand's identity? Because if she reveals that Halbrand is Sauron, then they might not make the rings. And Sauron has convinced her now that it is necessary to make the rings. That's why I say, like, he's kind of seduced her into that bit. And so she hides that so that they can complete the creation of the rings. That's my read on it anyway. So anyway, as far as the rings go, the rings themselves, somebody had a funny comment earlier. I want to see if I can find it. I feel like I can go way back. There are a few that I haven't ever talked about. Okay, here we go. Same metal alloy, different colors. Yeah, I wonder about that. That's a good question. I don't really know a lot about metallurgy, but you can certainly add just one thing extra to make this silver and this gold, or maybe it could be down to temperature. Would temperature affect it? I don't know the answer to that. But same metal alloy, different colors. Yeah, who knows? They needed something to look cool. They got them to look cool. I do like the design of Nenya, Galadriel's ring. It looks really cool. All right. So we talked about the forging of the rings. Talked about the Harfoots. Talked about Halbrand and probably Gandalf. I'm excited to go to Rune next season. RHU accent circonflexe. I don't remember what it's called. And Rune. It's a region of Middle Earth that's all over the maps, but that is never explored. And so that's one of those, like, that's the kind of thing I get excited about. It's the blank part of the canvas that I want to see more of, to see somebody's interpretation of it. Again, like we've talked about many times, just because it's not your headcanon doesn't mean it's not valid headcanon. And that's basically how we have to take this entire story, is headcanon. It's not canon, it's headcanon. It's somebody's interpretation. And for that reason, I'm excited. I'm not like completely in love with season 1. Obviously, I have big problems with it, but they're not so big that they overshadow the stuff that is good. Some of the performances are good. Obviously the landscapes and the graphics and the care that went into making the costuming and the sets and all that stuff, like, it is apparent and it is lovely to watch. And so, for that reason, yeah, I can't give it a 10. It's not a 10, but it's probably like a 7.5. I'm really enjoying myself, and I am looking forward to season 2 and going to some new places. So hopefully you guys are as well. I'm sure that we'll do some more commentary. This was just me yakking on for almost an hour now, but I'm sure we'll do some more commentary on the podcast with some other perspectives, and take some of those things on. But for now, I'm going to go have me a vacation, and hope you guys enjoy your weekend. Don't forget to go over to Discord and be nice to each other there, but hash it out and let everybody know what you thought of the Rings of Power. Anyway, thanks for watching today, and I will see you guys next time.